Welcome, wonderful listeners, to the Shadow and Starlight Podcast, where two friends deep dive into popular fantasy and romantasy books. We get into the stories, characters, world building, lore, and more. And most importantly, we'll have a damn good time while we do it.
So buckle your seatbelts for this wild roller coaster ride of emotions, magical worlds, and laughs. I'm Kinsey.
I'm Kana.
Today we're covering chapters 19 through 27 of Quicksilver by Callie Hart.
First and foremost, please listen carefully to our content warning. These are adult books we are covering, and neither of us have a filter, so this podcast is rated R and for those 18 plus. Regarding spoilers, if you have not finished the entire Quicksilver book, please come back after you do so. While we are discussing a certain stretch of chapters, we will be doing so with the perspective of what happens in the entire book. This will help us dive deeper into the theories and appreciate the masterful foreshadowing of Miss Callie Hart. So going forward, all episodes on our show will contain spoilers for the whole series or book being covered.
Next, if you like what you hear today and want more, please come back next Thursday, and next Thursday, and next Thursday, and every Thursday after that for a new podcast. A new episode. Shit.
I'm totally doing that.
I'm fine with that. As a baby podcast, we would love to hear your feedback to better ourselves and expand our book-loving community. Please feel free to give us reviews, reach out to us on social media, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and watch us on YouTube at Shadow and Starlight Pod.
Hell yeah. So our announcement, I know we've already talked about it a couple times in our intro and the last episodes, whatever, but I just want to announce again that after Quicksilver, we are going to be covering The Empyrean by Rebecca Yarros. So really popular series. I'm hoping if you've read it, dive back into Fourth Wing and Iron Flame with us. We're going to really get into it and discuss a lot of theories and stuff in preparation for Onyx Storm. We are going to cover Onyx Storm directly after we finish Iron Flame. So we've timed it to perfectly line up. So we'll be here for you when you finish it in like 2 days and you have a terrible book hangover and you're possibly still crying. We'll see. Yeah. I'm afraid. We are going to add a little something after our announcements called the Drink of the Pod, because we are always sipping if you watch us on YouTube. And we might as well tell you what we're sipping. So I'm actually sipping a strawberry margarita, and it's delicious.
Today, I actually just have water. It was a little bit more juicy last episode, but I have water today.
Atta girl. Oh, juicy. You don't say. This is a juicy episode. Oh, it really is, though.
It is. To kick off our episode, Kana's going to lead us through our Shadow and Starlight synopsis, aka her unhinged summary detailing the events of these chapters.
Ceres awakes from a feeder nightmare in Fisher's bedroom to him sprawled in a chair. He heads off to a war camp using their oath to order her to stay in bed and heal, and she hates it. Sounds like heaven for all of us that have to adult and go to work day after day after day. Sarah spends her quote-unquote incarceration, hating every second of it, and hanging out with Onyx. Carrion visits her on the last day, suggesting they revenge fuck on Fisher's bed. Not a chance, brah. No longer barefoot, Carrion informs her that his benevolent kidnapper gave him new boots as long as he takes a bath. And apparently he was scrubbed almost to the bone and then basically got jerked off by water sprites with special moss.
I'm so happy we got to this episode.
God, I told you it was going to get juicy, y'all. Finally healed, Ceres begins to experiment over 8 days until the Quicksilver actually laughs in her face for her numerous failed attempts. Memphis comes to check in on her and informs her that she is requested for another dinner date by Fisher, to which she insists he and Carrion join them as a buffer. And try as they might to do their job as buffers, Fisher and Ceres can continue their usual dynamic of provoking each other, but also flirting at the same time. Next, the entire crew heads to the Inish war camp and get a look at Amentreath, the seat of the enemy, across from that darn river. Oh wait, sorry. The river is actually literally called the Darn, not that darn river. I hope you like that joke, everybody. I thought it was funny. Carrion and Ceres spar with Renfis, the former getting his ass whooped, and the latter learning rather quickly, being her badass self until Fisher distracts her, projecting his voice into her ear in a way that gives her chills. Fisher shocks us all by saying please not once, but twice to get Ceres in his tent to share some soup with him. And I gotta say, what is it with these fantasy books and soup?
Literally.
Even in When the Moon Hatched, they had a soup date. I was like, yo, is soup an aphrodisiac or something? It's not.
I don't know.
It's definitely not.
We all know what soup means in another fantasy series.
To no one's surprise, they start arguing / flirting again. Sarah's trying to tell him that he could just ask her to do things politely instead of commanding her or using their oaths. When she rambles about wanting to save everyone from the feeders, he just can't stop himself from flipping the table, pinning her against the wall, and a kiss. I guess her altruism really gets him going. And when she tells him she wants that big fat cock, he pulls away. But then he kisses her again. Slay. He lets her feel his racing heartbeat, the Quicksilver stilling in his eye, and Ceres bolts to find Ren, once again embarrassed that he can sense her raging horniness, as I would be as well. He takes her into the war room where she finds Carrion feasting on a big fat piece of quiche. The two watch a tense interaction between Fisher and his army, who are apparently pissed he disappeared and then left them to fight the war alone. Fisher, for some mysterious reason, can't tell them why he left, but he tells them it was his only choice. And Danya attacks him. Anger management girl. Ceres yells for her to stop, shattering Danya's sword into pieces. Everyone is shocked to learn that Fisher's little human friend is an alchemist. But before anyone can process what is happening, chaos descends as the enemy approaches the darn river.
River.
I just thought that was like such a weird name for the river.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay.
It is. It's weird.
Yeah. Anyways, Carrion and Ceres help break the ice on the river while simultaneously arguing about whether or not Carrion is considered her ex or just one of her past lovers. A horde of vampires 50k deep is gathering on the other side, and the army works quickly to break the ice while Fisher drowns the feeders with his magic. Malcolm enters our story here, taunting Fisher and trying to create dissent amongst the Fae ranks and their commander, Fisher. After making sure Ren is babysitting the annoying one, aka Carrion, Fisher takes Ceres back to his family's estate. The two continue their usual banter, laced with sexual tension. Her resolve has disappeared, and she has got to get that D before she dies, resulting in a life-changing smut chapter. A bang, a bang, a bangity bang. I said a bang, bang, bangity bang! Featuring Fisher's dirty mouth and an assist from his magic. After being fucked senseless, literally, and getting some new body art, Sarah spends the night alone and Archer drops off some snacks to replenish her energy from all the, quote, strenuous intimate relations. Back at camp the next morning, Fisher enters into a cold rage after learning Ceres was sterilized in Silverin and goes to blow off some steam. And this is actually so freaking sad on a real note. After finding the forge, Carrion joins her and gives her the Quicksilver after his kidnapper insisted he stop being lazy. Fisher bullies Carrion, to which he says, dude, maybe you need to get laid, causing Ceres to choke on the nuts and meat she's been eating. And I'm like, wow, that's the second time in 24 hours she's had nuts and meat.
Callie was very intentional with the meal.
I mean, what else would they be eating? Soup?
Literally, again.
In the next chapter, Fisher takes Ceres to inspect the shards of Danya's sword stuck in the wall. Ceres learns from Ren and Lorith that it was a god sword no longer containing magic, explaining part of Danya's anger. Ceres doesn't cower to her, as she shouldn't, because Homegirl is the most powerful alchemist ever recorded. Whoop whoop! Ren informs us that they have 1 year to stop Malcolm or it'll be too late, adding immense pressure on Ceres to make relics and possibly more magical swords. When Fisher goes to Telena to heal, it is Ceres' turn to be jealous. As many of us do when we feel an inconvenient emotion, she asks Lorith where the fuck she can get a drink. The two grab some whiskeys, and Ceres grills him on Fisher, Faye, and also canines, making Lorith very uncomfortable at this taboo topic of drinking blood. He actually informs her that without the blood curse, it's basically a kink that makes banging extra good. Shifting topics, we learn that Lorith used to be a traveling singer. When he was found on his deathbed thanks to some hungry vampires, Fisher found him and shared a part of his soul to save him, binding the two forever. Aww.
So cute.
Back at the Fisher family estate, Ceres is hungover AF and spends the day exploring. After another day of rest, Fisher shows up in a green shirt and tunic. Kenzie, you blushing yet? I know how you feel about him wearing green.
He wears it so much. That's what made me be like, bro, what's up with him in this green? I was like, well, he actually might look good in it.
After he heals again, Fisher wants to show her something, and no, it's not that big fat cock. She's already seen it, so get your head out of the gutter, y'all. Just kidding. I'm actually talking to myself. It's a cozy little town, Ballard, a buzz of celebration of the longest night of the year. And for a nice change, they actually go on a date, drinking an ale and having their first civilized conversation. Ceres gets a glimpse into Fisher's grief and self-hatred, and just as they kind of dance around, acknowledging their feelings and the explosive events of their banging, This girl, Wendy, interrupts to be nosy, but she's actually very sweet. Maybe Fisher should give her Bill because they both have plain ass names. I'm sorry. If your name is Wendy or Bill, I'm sure you're great. But that's not a Faye name.
Poor Wendy didn't have a chance.
No, she didn't. I was coming for her from the beginning. After Saris is unexpectedly slammed with Quicksilver voices in her head, the two head to his mother's house to sleep. Separately, unfortunately. Saris awakes to a distressed, trembling Fisher, and she tries to comfort him. After ignoring his protest, she stays with him while the Quicksilver takes control. To distract him, Saris tells him about her terrible upbringing in Silverin and training with the rebels until sleep claims them both. Saris wakes up to something hard. Wink, wink. Thank you, Miss Callie, for yet another spy scene so soon after the first one, and it's even hotter because hello, mind speaking. Yes. This is like the best romantic trope ever.
Yes.
It's so hot. Yeah. After they fuck each other's brains out once again with some light blood drinking, it's time for breakfast. And the gentleman he is, Fisher uses his magic to give her a baller new outfit, considering he tore her only outfit to shreds hours ago. Saris discovers new rune tattoos on her arms and hands, which Fisher vaguely explains. I'm like, girl, by the time the series ends, you're going to be inked up. And that's the end of the synopsis for this chapters. It was a lot.
It was a lot. But, oh my gosh, when you mentioned the quiche, my brain instantly went to the line where she was like, what's quiche? Because I feel like that's such a human food. She's like, what's quiche?
And it's like quiche in a war camp. I mean, I guess they've been there for so long, they'd be having like meals and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't sound intelligent at all. All right. Shall we move on?
Now that we are finished with the summary, time to head into our chapter text section where we will discuss all notable things in this stretch of chapters, including theories, foreshadowing, and more. And hang on tight because we have quite a few bits of foreshadowing here. We're so close to the climax of the story. Callie Hart is just dropping little nuggets everywhere. So buckle up. All right, first we're going to talk about Saris's dream in chapter 19. So I think the more that we actually read fantasy books, the more that we pick up on certain writing styles. And I think that Sarah A. Parker and Callie Hart have some of the same writing styles in terms of foreshadowing. Specifically, when this chapter starts off, well, the chapter opener is a nightmare that Saris was having. And I knew immediately to annotate this part and take note. I'm not going to read the entire dream because it was like a page and a half long, but I will discuss which part stood out to me the most. Quote, I was met with the putrid stench of rot and sharp yellow snapping fangs. There were crowds of them, feeders. That's what Fisher had called them. He had also called them foot soldiers, but they didn't seem like soldiers. A soldier had to be able to follow orders, to enact the will of another. The things behind these doors were monsters, capable only of obeying their thirst for blood, end quote. So we did touch on the introduction of feeders very briefly last episode. We get a little bit more of them this stretch. And this is where the story really gets interesting because I was not expecting vampires to be in play. And when they were introduced, I was like, oh shit, like we got vampires now? We got alchemists, we got fae, we got vampires.
Technically, we also have witches in this world, but we don't really get them in book one.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll get them in future books, but we know that they exist in this world.
A little bit of everything. Because Fisher's mother was an oracle, right?
Sorry, I was sipping my strawberry margarita. Oh, yeah, she was. She saw. Yeah. That's for sure.
This is like the ultimate fantasy book.
It really is. As long as dragons come back to life.
Yes, please bring back the dragons. Or at least give us a good story about them. I need a flashback. I need something.
What's the bare minimum?
So not only are we learning more about the feeders here, but we are getting a glimpse of her fear and feelings in the midst of hundreds, maybe thousands of feeders. Essentially, feeders are vampires, and Saris's not quite romantic dinner with Fisher will not be her first encounter with these scary monsters. Later in the book, she actually grows some balls and helps slay these monsters. So I think this dream of her being surrounded by vampires and feeders was great foreshadowing on Callie Hart's part because we do get a similar scene later on in the book when she actually faces off with the vampires. So I think this was a way of her like preparing us for that scene.
Yeah, it definitely was a nice warm up to her actually facing them in battle because they actually sound pretty scary.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Though I just love me some Kingfisher, sadly, y'all, he does lose some cool points in such a chapters, and it makes me so sad. Here's why. Quote, unless you need to relieve yourself, you won't get out of that bed, Osha. Even then, you'll go to the bathroom and get straight back into the bed. End quote. So, embarrassingly, did I think that this was kind of hot the first time I read it? Yes.
I
Yes,
did
I did.
too. It's okay.
However, I did not realize that this statement was an actual command that Fisher used against Sarris with the blood oath. Not cool, Fisher. Not cool at all.
I know. Like, what if she wanted to get up and do some jumping jacks? Okay, look.
Right. He
You
literally
didn't
made
think
like
to work that into the command.
right, like
You could do
yay,
10
she
jumping
gets to
jacks a day.
relax. She got to get back in bed.
Yeah. I was like, oh, he's commanding her. But then I was like, oh, that would suck to be in bed for that long.
Yeah. And
I don't know.
it hurt her in the long run. It hurt her to be like forced against her will and for him not to trust her. And honestly, all she was asking was for him to ask her nicely and she would consider behaving.
All right, so we're going to foreshadow our introduction into Stannis Roth because it's been mentioned many times up to this point, and we know how important it is. Knowing what happens at the end of the book, this is eventually going to become Sarris's kingdom, I think, probably, unless something happens. But we do finally get a visual of the land this stretch, and might I say, it looks really scary, but also really cool. Quote, the land on the other side of the river was blackened, charred wasteland. No snow covered the ground there. Pillars of smoke rose up to meet the grim, foreboding sky, clad in a mantle of iron-gray clouds. There were no trees, no greenery, only black dirt in the smoke, and in the distance, the jagged outline of a black and terrible fortress situated on top of a looming hill. Ugh, scary! But also cool. Also, the walls are built from the bones of demons, giving it like a slick feel / sheen, which is like also scary, but also like nice. But yes, anyway,
nice.
Writing. I might want to live there. I don't know.
Ew.
I mean, if I was a badass vampire queen, I totally would. But I don't think Cana Gillespie could live there. Anyways, I feel like this was great writing on Callie's part. I definitely want to see some fan art, but I had a very vivid picture in my brain of what Stannis Roth looks like. And it's a perfect depiction of not only the war to come, but also the people they are at war against. It's very fitting along with the vampire and feeder description that we get. All of it's just reminding us of like death and destruction, I guess. Basically what the vampires are. They are the undead, so the connections are very clear here. So I love that. Definitely thank you, Callie. I really appreciated the picture that she painted and the warning of what's to come, and really just the foreshadowing for the next book and how big of a role that Stannis Roth is going to play. If you see fan art of Stannis Roth, specifically the castle, I guess that's what it's called.
I don't know.
Please tag us in it because I want to see it. So yeah, tag us at Shadow and Starlight Pod.
Please and thank ya. All right, now we're going to talk about briefly Madra's evil plan.
We both did like the evil finger.
So we know that Madra wanted all magic to be forgotten once the portals were closed, but she knew that some Fae might be hiding amongst the humans, which is why certain resources were limited. Quote, that's why metal was so hard to find then. Madra took it all. She wanted to keep the Quicksilver away from the people. She knew there might be people like me within the city capable of controlling it, end quote. She feared that the metal would spark a reaction and wake the Quicksilver, which would, 1, reveal the other realms, and 2, allow others to travel to Zilverin. So I think that this was just a little bit of foreshadowing of maybe Madra's reappearance or just her reasoning behind why these portals were closed so long and why the Quicksilver pool was never discovered. We just get a few more answers here, but that was something we want to briefly touch on. Now we're going to move on to Kingfisher gaining back his cool points.
That was fast.
I couldn't stay mad at my man for too long, though. Like, he had to gain them back, of course.
Well, obviously, he gets them back after what he did.
How could I stay mad at him after he saved someone's life?
Oh, true.
Yeah.
You were like, he saved someone's life, and I'm like, he just fucked her so good. He's forgetting.
Oh.
That is... Yeah, this episode really put me in the gutter.
I mean, 2 scenes, 2 spy scenes. So granted.
Yeah, and like what, 150 pages?
Yeah, it was
adequate.
packed. But not to make him saving somebody's life sound basic, but he actually he gave a man a part of his soul. So like this is why he's getting his cool points back, because what? Instantly forgiven.
Oh, well, not to mention, like, he didn't even know Lorith. It was just like some random dude. And he was like, yeah, I'll give you my soul.
Yeah. So when Ceres and Lorith went down to have a drink, Lorith shares a wholesome story about Kingfisher and his attempt to answer a curious Ceres. Because at this point, she's asking away, she's asking questions, and he's like, I need a drink. You're asking me too many questions. I need to be drunk for this conversation. We also learned that our guy Lorith can sing, but that's besides the point. Basically, Lorith was attacked by vampires, damn, and he was left to die in the ditch, double damn. And when Kingfisher found him, there was no way that Lorith was going to survive. Healer or no healer, like he was dying, like he was dead. So Kingfisher was like, "Hey man, don't die. Have a piece of my soul here. Like no biggie. Like just have my soul.
Take a slice."
And they lived happily ever after.
Oh, so cute. Well, we'll find out, but hopefully they live happily ever after. All right, now we're going to dig into the foreshadowing we get into Kingfisher's past, because he actually does have some moments of vulnerability in the stretch of chapters, and we are piecing things together just as Ceres is. So in this stretch, Kingfisher takes Ceres to Ballard, which is where his mother's from, and Fisher's walls are slowly crumbling, and it's like he's not even trying to push her away anymore. He can't help himself.
Yeah.
But during the stretch, when they visit Ballard, they attend the feast and stay in his mother's old house in the square, and we learn how important his mother was to him, and also how important she was to Ballard, seeing that they actually have a statue to honor her. So that was pretty cool. And then also while they're in Ballard, Ceres has that strange episode. So we're going to talk about that briefly as well, the foreshadowing. So they were just enjoying their biscuits that Wendy so graciously gave them. And those strange words appeared in Ceres's mind. The Anarath more, over and over again. She was feeling dizzy, and she actually repeats them out loud. She finds out from Fisher later. And these are the words the Quicksilver spoke to her in the first time she came into contact with it. Later, we find out that the words mean release us. I'm going to read a quote now. Quote, "A million voices, the sound was deafening." End quote. That's how Ceres describes how the Quicksilver sounds in her head. And she also describes the voices to sound terrified, which sounds really terrible. A bunch of terrified voices screaming inside your head.
Yeah.
Ooh. And we later found out that these words are tied to Fisher's past and the bargain he made with Malcolm. So a lot of stuff is starting to make sense here. And she's also starting to put the pieces together that he has a bargain with Malcolm, and he is forbidden by said bargain to tell anyone what happened or where he went. But just know that Fisher was not the only one suffering for over 100 years. So stay tuned for our last 2 episodes regarding this book, and you'll find out more about it. Or you can hear us talk about it, because you probably already know what happened.
Yeah. Okay, I've been waiting to talk about this. Now we're going to talk about intimate gestures. Because when they were talking about this, I instantly thought of the Vampire Diaries. And as the Vampire Diary fanatic that I am, I was kicking my feet once I found out that drinking the blood of somebody during sexy time is considered very intimate. And I immediately went back to my memory of when Damon let Elena drink blood from him when she first turned into a vampire. And Stefan was pissed because he knew what that meant. He was so mad, and I loved it so much.
I haven't watched Vampire Diaries. Well, I've watched the first season, but
yeah,
I get the dynamic.
He knew what he was doing when he let her drink from him, but yeah, it's a thing. And so basically, just like in the Vampire Diaries, it just heightens the emotion of both partners and make the experience worthwhile. So yeah.
Damn. I wish we could do that.
Literally.
Is that a weird thing to say?
No, not at all.
I feel like that in a lot of fantasy books, at least, that's like a giveaway for mates, is when they want to fight each other.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about the tattoos that Kana mentioned earlier. This stretch of chapters reminded me of so many different fantasy-esque books and shows. And this particular part of the book just brought me back to my ACOTAR days, because Ceres has tattoos. They only appear after she's been intimate with Fisher. And it doesn't help that in chapter 27 is named Marked. So what does this mean? Later on, Talina informs us that these are actually a sign of a god binding, which is an ancient type of maiden bond that is very powerful. Ceres asked her if mates still get these markings during intimacy, and Talina informed us that maiden bonds like these were only in storybooks to romanticize the idea of mates. Quote, "Oh no, definitely not. You only see that kind of thing in storybooks." Talina scoffed. They called it a god binding, a blessing from the gods themselves. They weren't real, of course. The most important couples in Evalia history were said to have them, but it was all romantic rubbish. Just something storytellers established to make their tales more tragic. Plus, they looked impressive in the illumination books. Illuminated. God damn.
Okay, so let's assume that none of the rumors of god bindings in the past were real. So is their relationship the first god binding?
Yeah, like the first real god binding, I think so.
Yeah,
Or
assuming
like,
that the other ones weren't actually real.
or at least like the first ones in like ancient history. Probably hasn't been any for a long time, but if not,
That's
probably
really
the first
cool.
ones.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's giving it a very fated destiny prophecy type of feel to the book, where they were meant to come together, they're meant to achieve some greater purpose together. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And actually, right now, as we get into our theories, I'm going to touch on the tattoos as well. So I'm touching on the scene where after they have slept together and she has the markings on her hands and her forearms, Fisher gives her some vague-ish answers on the body art and what it means. So according to Fisher, the marks she gets are chosen for her. And assuming this is a god binding, I'm assuming the gods chose it for her. Some kind of higher power, or it's in line with maybe a prophecy, or just represents the person that they're marking. And he tells her what some of them mean. The biggest one on one of her hands, meaning blessed one, which is interesting. And then others that he sees on her, the different runes mean light, dark, silver, steel, air, fire, water. And Fisher kind of declares that this is just boring alchemist stuff, which I guess makes sense considering her abilities. But I'm theorizing that the Blessed One tattoo signifies her as either the most powerful alchemist ever, but it could also just be meaning like she's blessed, she's God binded, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that he tells her that the biggest rune that she has is one that he can't decipher yet. And since he can't lie, I'm assuming that he actually can't. But I'm like, okay, what does this rune mean? I feel like it may be important in book 2, possibly. And then we also get info on Fisher's tattoos as well, because she asks him what his mean. And we learn that he has one that means vengeance, justice, and sacrifice. And again, these are all things that make sense to who Fisher is in his story. So I think it may be like they represent like the person they mark more of. But I also think that maybe like their markings could have something to do with a prophecy, or are going to be some kind of important something in book 2. We'll see.
Yeah. I think that even though he can't lie, I do think there's still some omission in his refusals, or like him saying that he can't quite decipher them yet. I think that he knows what the biggest rune is hinting towards. Okay, this is a crazy theory, but I literally was on my way to work this morning and I was listening to our episode 2, and this just came to me because we were always talking about Finrin's mysterious death. So I was like, bro. And I also, when I was doing my research for this episode, I learned when Laura was talking to Ceres that Finrin was a part of a soul sharing. He was sharing a soul with somebody else.
Yeah.
So this is my theory. So Kingfisher's father was on the brink of death when someone shared their soul with him to save him. So now, given the rules of soul sharing, this could be the way he died, or maybe why he disappeared. I don't know. So basically, the rules are, for example, Finrin was dying. Somebody, we're gonna name him Bob. Bob came and saved
Bob, Bill, and Wendy. Anyway, sorry.
Bob saved Finrin by giving him a piece of his soul. So if Bob dies first, then he can't pass over to the spirit realm until Finrin dies. But if Finrin dies first, then Bob's soul goes back to him and he lives peacefully until it's his time to die. So my thing is, what if Finrin was on the verge of death and Bob saved him. Finran did what he had to do in the midst of taking Carrion back to Zilverin and all that stuff. And once he felt like his lifespan was accomplished, or he felt like he had everything set in place for his children and people to take over, he killed himself so that Bob can have his soul back. Or maybe Bob died and he didn't want Bob to suffer, so he killed himself so that his soul can go back to him. I don't know. This is just something I was thinking about. This is just a theory that I had because we don't know how he died or how he disappeared.
I actually like love the theory, and it's like actually really good and creative, but I'm just not over Bob. You were explaining it, and I was like locked in, and then you said Bob like twice, and I was like, oh my god.
I was trying to make it as less confusing as possible, so I had to just say a name.
Yeah. Well, that's actually very interesting. Yeah, he did soul share, and so that could also tie into him possibly dying, which that would make sense. I feel like, considering who we know Fisher to be, I feel like his father was also very altruistic and good, and so I feel like he would not want to trap anyone, you know?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. All right. Okay, now we're going to talk on a theory touching on Nimmerel, which is Kingfisher's sword, and then also just the god swords in general. So Renfis explains to Ceres that he isn't really sure why Nimmerel still has magic when a lot of the other god swords don't. Quote, all we know is that when the god swords went silent and abandoned the rest of the Fae who carried them, Nimmerel stayed, at a cost. The blade used to shine brilliant silver, but as the centuries have passed, it's blackened and tarnished. But Nimmerel has stayed. The spirit of that sword, or the magic inside it, whatever you choose to believe it is, has stayed. And I have 3 lines of thinking for this. Number 1, Fisher and Ceres are part of a prophecy to save Avelia, or possibly the entire Fey realm, or who knows, all the realms. I don't know. Making him special and making his sword retain magic when others have not, to assist him on his journey or prophecy. Number 2, Nimmerel is just a unique sword, and Fisher is kind of lucky that it retained a little magic. Or 3, maybe could him having the Quicksilver in his body help the sword stay active, because we know that the god swords actually have Quicksilver in them. So I was like, I don't know. Since they have Quicksilver, he has Quicksilver, maybe he's actually connected to the spirit of the sword in a way that has caused it to stay around. I don't know.
Yeah.
Random sword theory.
I like that. I like all those theories because we know that Quicksilver has sentience. So it's like, what if, like you said, the Quicksilver in his eye and the Quicksilver in his sword kind of like work together to keep the magic? I don't know. I also like the theory that he was just prophesized to save all of Evelia or all the realms, because he is referred to as Dragonsbane and a lot of other different nicknames that hint towards a prophecy of him being the savior of the world. So I don't know. I like all of those theories.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things at play. Randomly, I also want to just say I love how, like, in this book and a lot of other books too, the magic system always has to have a balance to it. Nimmerel is a great example of that, because the cost of it keeping its magic was that it's tarnished over the years and it doesn't look as cool as it did. Magic always has to have a balance, which is good for story terms and everything else, but I don't know. Random, I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's lucky kind of metaphoric too. That like the longer it keeps its magic, the more tarnished it becomes. 'Cause I think that a lot of the Fae kind of use their powers for ill purposes, and it just sheds a lot of dark light over. So like Malcolm, for example, like his land is just very deadly and just dark and nasty, and it's just because he's using his magic for ill purposes. And I think that it's metaphoric, I think, to see that the longer that you use this magic, the more tarnished it's going to become.
Yeah, definitely. All right, my next theory is about Carrion and his upbringing in Zilverin. So I found it very, 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 very interesting in this stretch when Carrion explains to Ceres that he actually knew about the fake. She's asking him, like, how are you just chill with everything that's happening right now? And he says it's because of his grandmother in Zilverin. Quote, it was a curious thing to find out that Carrion had, in a way, been brought up to believe that this would happen to him at some point. And this line made me think on my reread. It feels very pointed, considering Carrion is actually a really important Fae that was brought to Zilverin as a child. Almost as if Finran knew Carrion might or would one day return to Evelia and might take his rightful place on the Evelian throne. I might be theorizing that as well. That would be kind of crazy. He needs to do some growing up possibly, but he could do it.
I feel like it would still be the same old Carrion Swift.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good guy. He wouldn't be a
He is a good
Matra.
guy. I don't think he would change though. Like I think he would still be his charismatic self.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But anyways, what I'm theorizing is that Finran maybe gave that book to Grandma Swift when he gave Carrion to them or set Carrion up in that life, or at least gave them like all the knowledge they would need to give to Carrion. So that way he made sure that even if Carrion grew up in Silverin, that family believed in Fae and ensured that he knew about them and believed in them as well. So he was prepared for a return one day maybe, which actually happens. But I just thought that was so interesting that yeah, Carrion, like this family he grew up in, even though it's not a Fae family, it's not his original family, like
Right.
they told him everything he needs to know about the Fae, from like how do you kill different sprites, or his grandma made him learn how to kill a full-blooded Fae warrior. And I'm like, dude, that is not your ordinary teachings
Yeah.
you give to children. So I don't know. That was just a random theory
Yeah.
I had. Maybe we'll figure out more about Grandma Swift and Finran and the whole Carrion drop-off situation. I would like to know more.
Same. Yeah. On my reread, I found it very interesting that he knew so much about the Fae, and he memorized that book like from cover to cover. Like he knew just so much. So I feel like he was prepared, and he not knew that this was gonna happen, but if the case came to be, like he would be prepared for it, and he wouldn't. And I feel like that explains why he never cowered to the Fae when he first entered the Fae world, or why he wasn't as shocked as Sirius, because he already believed in them. He knew that they were here.
All right, I have one more like random-ish theory that I totally missed on my first read. How the heck did Wendy know so much about Saris and like where she's from? Like, what? Anyways,
Yeah.
so right off the bat in Ballard, after Saris introduces herself, Wendy says, quote, "Ah, a Silverin girl, God's alive, I felt it. I knew the moment the gates opened again, I felt you pass through. There was a buzzing in the air that day." End quote. Excuse me, ma'am, what? How do you know that? So it's not shocking that Wendy knows about Silverin, given that Fisher's father went there. And I'm assuming she's old enough to remember, like, possibly when all the portals were open and Faye were traveling. But I'm just like, how does she know immediately that number one, Saris is from there, and number two, that Saris is the one that came through the portal that day? I'm like, maybe she just put that together because she knows that Fisher was gone and he went to save her. Somehow she put that together. I don't know. But my working theory is that Wendy maybe has some magical ability or power to sense, know, or foresee things, like possibly an oracle. But I just thought that was interesting. I was like, how does she know this? How? And Fisher doesn't bat an eyeball.
Maybe that I love that because now I'm making connections. So like maybe that's why Fisher's mother was probably so close to Wendy. That's why Kingfisher was so close to Wendy, and that's why she was maybe so important in Ballard. Maybe there's some connections there. Maybe there are other oracles that she knew there, or something like that. I feel like that probably has a lot to do with her connection to Ballard. I don't know.
Maybe we'll see Wendy again. Who knows? And maybe we'll see Bill again. And Bob.
And not Bob.
Just kidding. Bob's not real. Okay, let's hit our favorite and notable moments / quotes of the stretch of chapters. Kenzie, start us off.
All right. So I really loved all the chicken nuggets that we got, the stretch of chapters.
I was reading the outline and I was like, chicken nuggets? I was like, there was chicken nuggets in this episode? And then I read through what you said and I still was like, what the fuck is she talking about chicken nuggets for? But now I get what you're saying.
I put that specifically just to throw you off. I was like, she's gonna be like, what the fuck?
I was like, what are you talking about? Meat, soup, and nuts and meat. Okay. What if they just had like dino chicken nuggies like for lunch?
Dude. I mean, they got quiche. They got quiche, so it's like at this point.
That's not the same as dino chicken nuggets, bro.
It's still humanly.
Yeah, very but I'm saying quiche is like something you can just whip up.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean,
quiche, dino chicken. Am I talking about?
Dino chicken nuggets, literally, they could just sit on a fire to like warm them up and just eat them.
Yeah, but where are they going to get them? The Faye grocery store?
I guess. Where did they get the ingredients for quiche? This isn't made with eggs.
Like harvest that shit. Yeah.
So they have chickens.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to see a chicken. I want to read about a chicken. I better
We
get a
got
chicken
so
next book.
sidetracked by chicken nuggets.
This is the purpose. I did this on purpose. Anyways,
Content.
so I love all the tidbits we get this stretch, and I feel like Callie Hart was really preparing us for war, and we are in for a rude awakening. I love all the foreshadowing of their maiden bond, because as soon as Kingfisher glamored Cersei's markings, then Moore reappeared. I just knew that this was like proof of my suspicions that they were mates. I mean, obviously we knew they were mates, but I think this was just proof of her like really giving us some answers here. Next, I'm going to rave about Fisher, of course. So we all saw this coming. It would not be right if I didn't rave about Kingfisher. So there was a specific part in chapter 27 that I annotated. Honestly, it's not even anything special. It's just a description of what Fisher looked like in this moment. And I thought I would just keep this handy and tucked away, which is why I highlighted it in my book.
Tucked away for later.
Yes. Then it reads as this, quote, Fisher sat at a round table by the window, long legs stretched out in front of him, the light catching at his hair and warming the black to dark brown. It glided to one side of his face, softening the hard edge of his jaw and the proud line of his nose, end quote. I just thought this was such a beautiful picture. Like,
it is,
I feel like in this moment, he's not worried. He's not suffering in this moment. He's just in his mother's old home, just chilling looking out the window, kind of at peace at this point. Because he tells Wendy that smiling isn't easy, but it's becoming easier. Next, I'm going to talk about Lorth and Sarah's bonding moment. I love the scene where they go and get drinks. And I pictured this scene perfectly in my head, and I will cherish it forever. This was such a cute scene. And it's evident that pretty much everybody except for Daniel loves Sarah from the start. But I think this is a special bonding moment between her and Lorth. I love that they're both a bit drunk and just spilling tea about their past. And another one of my favorite lines was in this scene, and it's, quote, convenient smelling bullshit.
Is that the new Spangle shit?
Yes.
It's the new, like, it's like the curse word of the book or something. We need to make that a series. Yes. And then we'll be like, at the end of season 1, we'll be like, here's all our favorite curse words from the book. Spangle shit, convenient smelling bullshit.
Yes. Lorth was telling her, like, oh, he's bound by oath. He can't lie to you. And she's like, smells like some convenient smelling bullshit to me. But yeah, I just love the scene. It was just like a cute little bonding moment between them. And I feel like Lorth is probably my favorite side character. Sorry, Carrie Ann.
Yes. Okay, we're also going to do a duo favorite moment situation. Talking about Fisher's jealousy. It's highlighted in these chapters by him bribing Carrion to take a bath, and then also insisting that he doesn't share quiche with Ceres. So that was funny. At first, I was not loving how jealous he was. Like, that's not really a trope that I love a lot. It was a little hot, but on a reread, I was eating it up because on my reread, I was keeping in perspective. He's Fae. They're mates. Like, it makes sense that he's jealous because Fae are very primal and protective about their mates, and scent is a really big, big thing to them. So on a reread, I was like, oh, it's so hot. He's like, he's the one smelling. Considering all that, I honestly feel like Fisher is honestly being tame with his jealousy. He really just could have killed Carrion, but he didn't. So that shows he's still good old Kingfisher. He's got a heart.
Yes. I found this so funny that, okay, originally he thought that Carrion was Ceres' brother when he went to retrieve him from Zilverin because her scent was all over him. And so I feel like as soon as he put the pieces together, it was just instant disgust. He was like, you need to bathe. You stink. Please bathe. Like wash everything. I don't want to smell you. Ill.
He's gonna bully Carrion for the rest of the series, I'm predicting.
Yes. I just feel like I find it funny that he was trying to push away Ceres and trying to make her hate him, but at the same time, he was like making sure she doesn't get too cozy with Carrion. Like, he was still being very protective and possessive over her. But at the same time, he was like, I don't want you either, but you can't have him either. Like, he can't have you either.
Bruh, how confusing for our girl Ceres.
Literally.
They handled it great. Girl's been through a lot. It's been like, what, a week? It's been longer than that, but still.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about my favorite moment. That's first, obviously. Is the Carrion's bath / foursome. And this is absolutely, if not the winner, but a contender for the funniest moment in the entire book for me. I was just like giggling. He described it so in detail. And then Sarah was like, dude, you've been here for one day and you already had a foursome with magical creatures. Knowing the playboy that Carrion is, it's just hilarious. And he certainly let Sarah know how much he enjoyed it. But anyways, in the next two books, I really hope that we get Carrion to continue his romantic pursuits and maybe with Dania, since Kenzie suggested that last episode. I'm kind of obsessed with this pairing and I really hope it happens. All right, my next favorite moment situation, I don't know, it's not really a moment, it's just a whole thing, but it might be my new favorite part of Romanices, and that's spice paired with magic. So if you've read Fourth Wing, there's a certain breaking of armoires and, lighting the curtains on fire that was so hot. And then in Throne of Glass, there's a certain magical set of invisible hands. And oh my god. It just all served to make this very specific, I don't know what I would even call it, just crack for me. But this interaction is also present in chapter 27, with Fisher's magic kind of assisting him and also showing some sentience, reacting to their joining and also traveling up her body, giving her the tattoos. But anyways, this is how Saris describes it. Quote, wisps of iridescent smoke trailed up my arms, circling my wrist, stroking over my skin, so soft and seductive that I trembled under the contact. It was him, an extension of him, and it was everywhere. And it is hot, 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 hot. Woo! Oh my god. Like, I just can't go back to reading normal romance with like normal ass spice. Like, where's the magic? Where's the yeah. But I just wanted to talk about how much I love that and why I probably will only read fantasy and romantasy from here until I die. Anyways, while we're on that wavelength, I'm also going to talk about how much I love the romance and a very specific quote, my favorite quote in the entire book. After Carrion calls Saris sunshine, Fisher asks him not to and treats us to a panty-dropping quote that is just chef's kiss. Quote, she is moonlight, the mist that shrouds the mountains, the bite of electricity in the air before a storm, the smoke that rolls across the battlefield before the killing starts. You have no idea what she is, what she could be. You should call her Majesty. Oh my gosh.
Love that.
Holy shit, Fisher. And holy shit, Callie. I got chills. Okay, I get chills like every
Literally.
time I read this. I was just like, oh. But anyway. Not just how beautiful the quote is, this is also really Kingfisher's first real show of intensity of his feelings towards Saris, and also reveals like how he sees her, because he really hasn't revealed that information to us, and he just puts it out there in front of Saris and Carrion, and Saris feels so awkward. She's like, should we go back to sparring now? Okay, one more favorite moment, y'all, is Archer, that little fire sprite. He is so cute. Everything he's done has been either hilarious or adorable. Like, he gets so embarrassed, or he gets like scandalized with the other sprites when they realized like the position Saris was sitting in on the table. And after the infamous bang scene, she comes out, Saris does, to find Archer giving Onyx belly rubs, and I was like, oh, that's so cute. And I mentioned this earlier, but I thought it was so funny that Archer knew exactly what they were doing in chapter 27, and she's like double horrified when he's like, intimate relations can be very strenuous. Here's some apple juice and some snacks. And then I laughed again when Saris was like, we were moving furniture. I was like, girl, who are you trying to fool? Like, he can scent it. Like, you were screaming.
It was such an awkward moment, but I love it.
So awkward. Anyways, I just said all that to say that I really like Archer, and I really love how alive and unique all the characters are in this book, and I really hope we get to see more of Archer next book.
Yes. He was a very fun character to get into, for sure.
Yes, I know. I was sad when we didn't get to see him as much toward the end.
Yes. And really quickly before we move on, I forgot to mention that my other favorite scene, which was the one spice scene where they were in Ballard and they were getting it on, and she's got like dialogue in her head and she's like thinking of like what he was saying, and it was actually him talking to her in her mind, and she was like, oh shit, like he's talking to me in my mind. She thought that was just her planning in her head.
That's usually how it happened when there's like mind speaking in fantasy books.
I would have been like, oh my gosh, you just heard everything I was saying.
She was bearing it all. She was like, I want it. Give it to me. I want it dirty and nasty.
And the whole time you can hear her.
Yes, ma'am.
She's like, oh shit, you heard that?
Dude, I think this might be our funniest episode yet. Actually.
Literally. Thanks to Callie Hart.
This was but also Callie Hart.
This is nice just of chapters.
This was a fun one.
All right. Time to close out our chapter chat section and move on to our myths and magics portion, where we will dive into the mythology that inspired Quicksilver, as well as explaining a world-building topic. Today, we're combining the two, discussing Creature Wiki, as well as exploring the origins of these mythical creatures. Feel free to skip ahead to our mini-series if you feel like you're already an expert.
Yeah. All right, so the first mythical creature we're going to talk about is sprites, because we just talked about Archer, so why not? These adorable creatures are a part of the lesser fae creatures, and there are 4 different kinds: fire, water, air, and earth. Most fire sprites reside/work at Fisher's estate, and we find them doing small chores around the estate, and they're also known to be very dramatic, which we can confirm at this point. In terms of origin, sprites are mythical fairy-like creatures often associated with water. They're very common in European folklore, and sprite comes from the old French word esprit. Is that a good French accent? No.
Yeah.
But it means spirit.
Nice. Dude, when I saw Sprite for the first time in this book, I was like, oh, like we getting real human. We got quiche, we got Sprite, but then I was like, oh, it's not Sprite.
Sprite. Not that kind of Sprite, bro.
All right, now we're going to talk about the Fae. And the Fae, they're not technically immortal, which is confirmed. They eventually die after living a very, very, very long lifespan. We know that the lifespans are very long. Seeing as Fisher and Everlane are over 1,000 years old. Talk about age gap. These Fae are oath-bound and they cannot lie. And when they're 21, they kneel before the Firin Stone and make a decision to always be truthful or take a lawless path. You know what this reminds me of?
What?
The people who work the wall in Game of Thrones. When they have to kneel in front of the statue and take
the Night's Watch?
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
This is what I'm thinking of in my head right now.
Okay. I like it.
Look
at you, yes. Game of Thrones girly.
I'm still on season 2.
God damn it. I've rewatched it 3 times this year.
Damn.
It's such a good show.
The episodes are so long. I just need time to watch it. I don't have time.
Whenever you finish, we'll do a bonus episode where we just rant for an hour about how they got the ending so fucking wrong. But you just let me know when you get there.
Okay.
No pressure.
Anyways, lawless Fae, they can lie, cheat, and steal, but the price is their honor. Fae offspring age twice as fast as human children, fully grown by 21. And we talked about Fae folklore in depth when we did the When the Moon Hatched coverage, but we'll touch on it again quickly. The first tales of fairies originated in Greek mythology, and they have origins in many cultures. Fae are often associated with nature. They usually having supernatural powers and are often depicted interfering with humans. They're often described as more than humans, but less than God, so kind of somewhere in between.
Yes. Okay, now we're going to touch on the high fae vampires specifically. So Malcolm is the prime example of the high fae, and there are others who chose to remain vampires as well. So like after the blood curse, the fae turned into what Malcolm is now, and there was eventually a cure, but he didn't take it. He liked the dark magic the curse gave him, and it gives them an even longer fae lifespan, so guess he was like, that's good enough for me. But Malcolm is the strongest, allowing him to fully turn someone and ensure they remain themselves and not turn into mindless feeders. But when his princes bite someone, they turn into the mindless hungry feeders that we've run into at this point in the story. The origins of vampires is a little more complex. Similar entities appear in ancient Mesopotamian, Greek, and Hebrew mythology. And the concept of vampires as undead creatures that cause harm originated in Eastern Europe, specifically Bulgaria. And I actually have a Bulgarian friend, so shout out Bibi, who listens to this podcast. Vampires were apparently a legend isolated amongst the Slavic people until war spread the idea westwards, and it became more prevalent in the 18th century, so much so that some people are actually executed for being vampires, which is wild. And the word itself is believed to come from the Serbian word vampire, which may have roots in the Turkish word Uber and the Slavic word pirati. No, that makes no sense, but I swear I found it and it looked true. But both of those mean to drink. So kind of makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah. All right, next we're going to talk about feeders, which are basically vampires. So we're going to talk about feeders in terms of the book. So the feeders are also known as the Sancerothian foot soldiers, and they can only be killed by silver. Very interesting, because it also kind of relates to the origin of vampires in mythology. And they're ruled by Malcolm, who is a high vampire fae, and they are sired to him and can only do what he says. And Fisher says that the vast majority of Malcolm's horde of feeders were once human, so they were turned into vampires, essentially.
I think that's so interesting, the difference between the high fae vampires that actually retain their souls, basically, versus the feeders. And I'm like, how is Ceres gonna rule over like the feeders and the high fae vampires in the court?
So, okay, this is my Vampire Diary mind coming back out. So, in Vampire Diaries, if you are turned by an original vampire, you're a sire to them. And if that original vampire dies, which is very unlikely because they can't really be killed, like they can, but it's very rare. So if that original vampire dies, then their whole sire line dies too. I don't think that's going to happen here, but I also don't think Malcolm is dead. So I think that's why all of them are still alive and will still reside in Sansaroth. I question whether if Malcolm and the Triumvirate dies, will all of his sired feeders die too? That makes sense.
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm just so intrigued. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen in book 2 with her taking over at Sandstroth. I can't wait to find out. All right, the next mythical creature we're going to talk about is a banshee. And oh my gosh, did you ever watch Teen Wolf?
No.
Shame.
I've watched tidbits of it, not the whole thing.
That was my first exposure to banshee, because one of the characters is later revealed as a banshee. These scary creatures are actually from Irish and Celtic mythology, and they're usually female. And it's believed that banshees evolved from the Irish custom of the lament, where women sing sorrowful songs at funerals. And the banshees are spirits that warn of an impending death by wailing, screaming, or lamenting, if you will. The word banshee comes from the Irish word bean sidhe. Don't know how to do an Irish accent. I'm not going to try. Do you know how?
No.
I was listening to this true crime podcast earlier that had an Irish guest, and I was like, damn. But it sounds so cool.
Makaya watched an Irish show. I think it was Irish. And she said, like, at first it was almost like listening to another language because it was so hard to decipher what they were saying because their accents were so thick.
Yeah. Yes. I had a little Irish friend in college, and she was so funny. And everything she said, I was just like, oh my God, say it again. It's so funny. Yeah. But anyways, that word that it comes from means woman of the fairy mound. Interesting. But Wendy actually talked about banshees and other creatures during Ceres and Fisher's visit to the Ballard. In terms to the book specifically, there are actually 4 different kinds of banshees. They are not named. Maybe we'll find out in future books. But we do know that they feed on the souls of the young. Scary.
Ooh. Next, we're going to talk about pixies. Pixies are mentioned briefly a couple times in this book. They're described as lightning fast with iridescent wings, and they come from British folklore and have origins in ancient Celtic times. The word pixie comes from the Irish word Pisiach. Pisiach, meaning fairy or magical creature, and they are described in mythology as mischievous, human-like, and small little cuties. They are said to live in ancient sites and like joy and spontaneous activities.
I also like joy and spontaneous activities.
Same.
All right, wraiths sound familiar? Yes, they do. From Akatar, yeah. Anyways, these creatures are not really described in the book, but in Scottish mythology, they are spirits of people who were tortured in life and are unable to reach the spirit realm. Brownie face. Wraith folklore is present across many cultures, generally described in the same way as spirits of the dead trapped again. But this kind of is funny. It's basically like the people at Sandsroth. They're basically trapped there.
Yeah, like wraiths are basically like souls that can't pass over. So yeah, like basically connected to Sansaroth because with the bargain that Malcolm had with Fisher, those spirits were being tortured until Fisher could fulfill the bargain. So, yeah. Lots of connections there. She was very smart with that one. Next, we're going to talk about sawtooth mermaids, which sound terrifying.
Yeah, that might be the scariest one here to me.
When I tried to picture it, I was like,
why.
no. I was like, no. Get it out of my head. Get it out of my head.
I actually looked it up, but I shouldn't have.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Don't do it.
So, sawtooth mermaids are mentioned in the book, but we cannot really find any information on these specifically. We assume that they're generally like the usual mermaid from Greek mythology, but with scary teeth. Many cultures outside of Greek also have various mermaid folklore. Origins are unclear, but the earliest legends trace back to Assyria, which is now northern Iraq and Syria. And the story is based off of the goddess of fertility that fell in love with the shepherd and accidentally killed him. So to escape her shame, she jumped in a lake and the gods turned her into a half fish, half woman creature. Interesting. I'm curious to see if these sawtooth mermaids will make an appearance later on in the series.
Yes. All right. The last magical creature we're going to talk about is mountain trolls. This Norse or Scandinavian creature was featured in the scene where Cerys and Lorith are at the bar, and they are giant, monstrous beings that live in the mountains and are very hostile to humans. In North creation myth, they were born from the armpits and toes of Ymir? Yeah. The frost giant from whom the earth was created. And they are typically larger than forest trees, so these motherfuckers are huge. And in this scene, it's described to be craggy face, which I'm guessing it just means it looks real grumpy.
Yeah. I really do appreciate like when authors include these lesser fae creatures because it just makes it a lot more interesting and makes the world a little bit more compact when you have different type of fae and not just like, you know, what the main characters are. So that's cool.
Yeah, it really just helps you build the whole world in your brain.
Yes.
I love it. I don't know. And it gets me excited for in the future. I'm like, are we going to meet these creatures? Is she going to slay these creatures? I don't know. We'll see.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Moving on, time for our mini-series Mix and Match, which I'm very excited for this week. Where every week, Kana and I will do 2 to 3 mini-series unique to our podcast. They won't be the same every week, so keep tuning in for all the fun. First, we're going to do Kiss, Marry, Kill. Kana's going to go first.
All right. My first one is Carrion, Fisher, and Renfis.
Off bat, I'm Marianne Fisher.
Obviously.
I'm going to kiss Carrion and kill Renfis. Because Renfis is not that high on my character list. So, yeah, that's what we're going to go with that.
Damn. Ooh. You're not going to like my answer. I'm going to marry Renfis. Like, I would marry Carrion, but he's a player, so whatever.
Smart.
Yeah. I would kiss Carrion and kill Fisher.
Okay. Wow. Oh. I was not expecting that. I was expecting to go a whole other way.
I wasn't either, but I was like, if I kill Carrion, I just can't live with myself.
Yeah.
And Fisher's yours. Like, I got my own man. Okay, you can have him. I'm gonna kill him.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But if you kill him and I can't have him.
I guess I'll bring him back to life for you.
I appreciate it.
Bam.
I appreciate that.
Only if you. Who did you kill? Renfis? You better bring back my Renfis. my Rennie poo poo. Rennie boo boo.
You said it so aggressively. Better bring back my Renfis.
This is our funniest episode.
It is. Oh my god.
Your Kiss Marry Kills you put in here are evil.
Okay, so my first one is Pelican, Buttface, Danya, and Carrion.
Okay, Pelican's dead, obviously. Buttface is out of here. I would marry Carrion, and I would kiss Danya.
Yeah, same.
That's easy. Yeah, Pelican.
Same. Actually, I would just marry Danya and kiss Carrion, so that way I'm not stealing your man, but about the same. Buttface is gone.
You're so considerate. All right, the next one is Madra, Pelican, and Malcolm. Yeah, this one's a little bit harder.
Shit. Okay. Who do I want to die the most? Technically, whoever I kill isn't really dead because all 3 of them have to be dead for them to die. So it doesn't really matter who I kill.
Logistical about it.
Doesn't matter who I kill. I wouldn't marry Billiken because he would make me have a kid, and Faye's children are very hard to bear. So no. I'll probably marry Malcolm, only to be close to his nephew that is introduced, I think, next episode.
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
his
I forgot
nephew,
about him.
cousin? I would marry Malcolm
Something.
to be in the same house with him because he sounds hot.
Oh my god.
And I would kill Billiken and kiss Madra.
Dude, you really thought that through. My answer is like straight up based on vibes. I think I would kill Malcolm because of what he did to our boy Fisher. And also, he just sounds like a little icky. More icky than the other dudes.
Yeah.
Little dude plus Madra. But anyways, I guess I would marry Bellican. Old butt face, I would marry him. But I would like totally just kill him in his sleep. Bam,
Yeah.
you're gone. And then Madra, I would kiss her. And she's probably super hot.
Yeah, I picture her to be super hot. I picture her to be that woman from The Incredibles with the bob, the little short one that waddles. I picture her like that.
All right. This last one is...
My next one is really evil. Okay, Mountain Troll, Fire Sprite, or Feeder.
I honestly... I guess I'm gonna kill the feeder because it's so disgusting. They're described really scary and it would try to eat me like all the time, and that's just inconvenient. So you're dead. I would marry the fire sprite because they're cute and they would keep me
But they're short.
probably for life.
They're probably at your ankles.
Well, probably. But listen, it's not a marriage for love. It's a marriage for, well, it's a forced marriage.
Marriage of convenience.
And I guess I would kiss the mountain troll. And it would probably bite my face off, but it's fine.
Okay. Are you ready for mine?
Oh, God, yeah. That was tough.
Wildly, I would marry the mountain troll because they're hostile. They're hostile towards humans, and I think that's kind of hot. That's my type of flirt right there. I'm gonna be like, are you flirting with me?
You are toxic. You do like that. That's why you love Fisher.
I would kiss the fire sprite and kill the feeder.
Wow. I really loved your reasoning there. Oh, that was amazing. Oh my goodness. All right, now we are going to do song association for our next mini series. We did this one for When the Moon Hatched, just essentially Kenzie and I each picking out 2 songs, reading why we associated it with the stretch of chapters, and reading a couple lines as well. So I'll start. My first song was Dark Side by Bishop Briggs. I've been on a huge Bishop Briggs roll lately. She's amazing. But I really picked this song because it showcases Fisher's trauma over his long life, and Sarah's, in this stretch of chapter specifically, is beginning to figure out why he's so tortured. The song reads, "Welcome to my darkness. I've been here a while, clouding up the sunlight, hurting for a smile." So Fisher has really been in an absolute dark hell for over 100 years, and that's not even the beginning of this man's trauma. Like, his parents died, Bellican butt face, it's the whole thing, all his war trauma. It's a lot. But in these chapters, he does tell Saris that smiling is becoming easier around her, which is really cute, and he rarely does it, but that kind of connects to the lyric I just read, and it's just like, oh, poor Fisher. I just felt so bad for him in the stretch of chapters, so I wanted to pick a song that really showcases his dark side and where it comes from and how hard it is for him. So that was my first song.
I love that. I love that he told her that. So cute.
Yeah, okay. That was really cute.
So my first song that I picked is Death of Peace of Mind by Bad Omens. And I picked this song because I feel like it really mirrors Fisher's conviction after he met Saris, his denial of their bond and his inner turmoil with their situation, him suffering from the Quicksilver and her just being a quote-unquote weak human, causes a lot of riffraff in their relationship. And he struggles with showing his love because he doesn't want their circumstances to hurt them in the long run. And we'll discuss their mating bond more in depth next episode and the premise of it, because that's when we get introduced to it. But at first glance, it isn't good, and I can understand why he would rather reject the bond than put her through the ringer like that. And I think that the title itself explains why I chose this song. But there is a specific line that I thought fits perfectly, and it reads as, quote, "When the curtains call the time, will we both go home alive," end quote. And I think this line is very metaphoric. I think it's talking I think it speaks literally and metaphorically. I feel like if he drags her to war with him to fight by his side, like, will she survive being a human? And if she even survives that, will she even be strong enough to mentally face the trauma that she's lived through? So I feel like we just understand, like, Fisher just dealt with so much. I didn't even think about what he'd go through if he lost Sirius. So I can understand why he tried to push her away, because he's already lost so much. He's gone through so much, and he finds his mate, and he's like, I can't lose you. You're a human. What am I going to do with you by my side? What if you die? What am I going to do?
I know. I feel like if he lost her, that would be the end for him. He just wouldn't be able to do it anymore. And that's really sad.
Yeah.
Let's get out of this sad depression hole. The second song I chose was Raw Raw by Kay Flay. I feel like it really captures Saris's and Fisher's relationship in this stretch. And in these chapters, we get a lot of Saris and Fisher, their relationship growing and just them interacting. Not only did they start banging in this episode, their dynamic changes crucially with less arguing and more like vulnerability, affection, and just like real conversations where they're not like arguing or provoking each other, flirting, whatever. So one line of this song, lying awake, naked in bed, thoughts of their body running through my head. It's hard to escape the winds of the past. Every time I say something real, I want to take it back. So this captures the sexual attraction, the wounds they both have in their past, and it also highlights Saris's struggle with Fisher's duality, because up to this point, he's still pushing her away. You know, sometimes he's kind of sweet and nice, and then another time he's mean and pushing her away. And so she's walking on eggshells, sort of, not really, just not knowing which Fisher she's going to get. And every time she says something real and really honest and puts herself out there, she wants to take it back immediately. She feels dumb for sharing things, wondering if he'll mock her, if she should even be sharing this with him, because they just met and they're not in a relationship yet. All right.
Yeah.
One more line. I came up from the depths of hell with a golf club in my hand. You disarmed me. No defense. My armor turned to sand. And I really like this. It definitely sums up how fast their relationship evolves. And it also is a shout out to when Fisher rescued her from Zilverin. Literally, she was in hell. Like, Zilverin sucked and she was literally dying. And he showed up and just like through the next, 1-2 weeks, he's just like totally disarmed her. Like, she's just falling so hard. So I really like the song. It's actually has been a favorite song of mine for a while. And I was just reading the lyrics today. And I was like, wait, this kind of works.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
So my second song, funny story. Sorry for all the rants. I'm a ranting girl. I love to rant. But anyways,
Okay.
The second song, I'm changing. I had a certain song in mind. I went to Dollar Tree before we filmed, and Into You by Ariana Grande played, and I instantly pictured Sarah singing this about Fisher. And it was like one line specifically that kind of stood out to me, and it was like, a little bit dangerous, but baby, that's how I want it. A little less conversation, a little more touch my body. And I was like, this is Sarah singing to Fisher. I feel like I was just jamming to it, and I was just like in the car just singing it, and I just could picture Sarah in my passenger seat and just jamming out to this song together. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Thanks, Dollar Tree.
Thanks, Dollar Tree.
You've supported our episode today.
Yes. Now sponsor us. No, I'm just playing.
All right, before we close out our episode, it is time for Trial by Trivia. So if you're new and just joining us for this episode, this is Mackenzie and I giving each other and our listeners 2 trivia questions at the end of our Quicksilver coverage. We'll tally up who has the most points, and the loser has to do something embarrassing or funny that the winner or you guys as fans suggest. So we would love to hear your feedback, ideas, and participation in this section. Kenzie, give me that question. I'm ready, I think.
Before that, Kana currently right now has 4 points, and I have 1.5 points. So that's where we're standing right now. All right, my first question. I hope this is hard enough for you. What was the name of the creature made of vines? And I have a hint if you need a hint.
Oh, you're giving me a hint?
Yeah, because I don't think you're going to get it.
I'm going to need it. Yeah.
Okay. So this was the creature that approached Fisher, Sirius, and Memphis when they arrived at Kalish.
I plead the fifth. I don't know.
His name was...
got me.
His name was Holgoth.
Damn! I even wrote that earlier today. I was like Googling it to see if it had some secret meaning.
I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. You know how I do. What is the official name for Fisher and his wolves?
Shit. Okay, wait. Dang, I read this. I read
I'll
this
give
on
you
my
a hint
reread.
since you gave me one, but it's not a
Okay.
very good hint.
Okay.
To me, it sounded Spanish, maybe.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm
Damn.
gonna.
Okay.
What is it?
It's Lupo Proelia.
Yes, I read that.
Yeah,
I
you remember it
literally
now.
read the Lupa. Yes, I do remember reading that though. Next, what was the name of the book that Carrion's grandmother gave him about the Fae?
Ooh, Legends of the Fae.
No,
Fuck. What
Fae
was it?
creatures of the Galarian Mountains.
Damn. Oh God. All right, you came for my life. All right, what does Saris share with the pixie in Ballard?
Mm. Mm. Does she love fishing? I don't know.
What? No, it's a food she shares with her. I'll give you that.
Oh, okay, a food. Mm.
What do they eat there?
Grapes, butter
What?
biscuits.
Yes. Fine, I'll give it to you because I feel bad for you that I've whooped your ass up to this point.
I was thinking that, but I was like, it's too obvious.
I thought that was gonna be an easy one. I was like, okay, she'll definitely get this.
Well, I felt tricked because I was like, it's too obvious. It's not biscuits, since we know that's what they were eating.
Oh, you thought I was gonna try and trick you?
Yeah, that was a trick question. Like
It wasn't even butter biscuits. It was Batel biscuits, whatever those are. But I'll give you the point.
I
Okay?
read it
You
as
have two
butter
and a half.
biscuits.
Two
I read
and
it
a
as
half.
butter biscuits. Thank you.
Okay, so our current standing is I have 4 and Kenzie has 2.5. So it's getting tighter. So buckle your
Listen,
seatbelts.
in order for me to give you hard questions and you miss the questions, I got to get questions right. So I need to get my I got to step on my A game.
I feel like when I'm reading, I need to be like actively looking for shit you would ask
I know.
me. Dude, I don't remember who it was that was telling me this the other day, but they were just telling me like how cool they thought our trial by trivia idea was. And they saw your whipped cream video and they thought it was so funny. And I was like, yeah, it is unique. Huh? So
It is nice. Are we cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finger guns. All right. That is a wrap. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying our Quicksilver coverage, and we're so happy you're here to laugh with us.
Yes. Join us next Thursday for our Quicksilver coverage, where we will be covering chapters 28 through 36, pages 418 through 506 for your reread or refresh your memory. We're almost done. Cry.
We have 2 more. We just, we can cry next episode when we only have 1 left. That's when it's really getting real. As always, we appreciate any and all feedback from you guys, our wonderful listeners. So please reach out to us on our socials. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't. And just reach out if you want to talk about When the Moon Hatched, Quicksilver, or like really any fantasy book. I'll talk to you about any books. So this is a baby podcast as well. Wait, are we a toddler podcast now? We're like, 7 episodes old?
Yeah, so probably like Tyler.
I guess. I don't know how this shit works. But we would love to see our little business grow with your help. So please take the time to leave us a review, follow us on social media and all major podcast platforms for a freshly baked episode to be delivered to you next week.
See you next week. Oh my God.
Hi, friends. See you next week.
Bye.